were sophomores.
So this is what Ryan's coming into, living in a house as a sophomore in college, correct? Okay.
Yeah. And so
Same thing.
Pat was pledging a fraternity, and it was, and this is not an exaggeration, it's pretty much Animal House.
Mm.
It was the bottom of the barrel of fraternities in North Texas. And
North Texas.
yeah, and he, he pledged his fraternity, and they carried around these silly, stupid, cheap swagger sticks. They were black painted dowels with a skull on top.
Oh,
My
no.
God.
And they had to carry them, and they were just silly. I mean, they weren't cool or
Like a
anything.
Halloween toy.
Yeah. But they had to carry him, and Pat carried it, of course. And Pat used his pledgeship as a opportunity, an excuse to get drunk every night, smashed out of his mind every night. And he would come in and just be horrible. He would turn on lights. He would turn on the heater. He would, if it didn't exactly suit his temperature, he'd crank the heater up in the winter, and he'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so we really got fed up with it. And Bernie and Bernie was an interesting guy. He looked about like Brett. And he was in AFROTC, Air Force ROTC, and he ended up flying 141 combat missions in Vietnam. He was a bright, cool guy. But of course he was prime meat for Higgins. Higgins went after him with all 4 feet, and I thought, Pat, someday you're going to push him too far, and he's going to break you in half. Frank Latroci was the guy that shot P all the way across the street.
So he was a legend already.
He was and he would sleep with covers all over me, except his biggest bloody nose sticking out. And Bernie was kind of engaged to Mary Beth. Mary Beth was about that far from the convent.
Oh.
And Bernie was a devout Catholic. Well, Bernie met Skippy. And Bernie would bring Skippy over at the house, and he would shut the door. And Higgins would say, "Oh, Skippy's over tonight, huh? You had her in your room this afternoon. Skippy peanut butter, smooth and easy to spread."
Oh, no.
And I thought, Higgins, you're way. And so anyway, we did awful things to each other. And we did something to Bernie that was just, Bernie was so good and so handsome and so strong and so mild and so pious. He was a perfect target. And Higgins rigged all this shit up. And Pat bought more rubbers and used less than any person I've ever met in my life. And he kept them in the drawer of his thing, and they were so old because he didn't use them; they just rotted.
No.
And Bernie started getting them when Skippy peanut butter would come over. He'd come over and get rubbers out of Pat's drawer.
Michael.
Well, I know I'm way past that with Sid. I mean,
Honey.
and so anyway.
This isn't actually where I have heard the story go, just for the record.
And
No.
so Higgins rigged up this deal and said, "Here's what we're gonna do." So So I think it was close to Easter or Holy Thursday or something. We all went to church. We still went to church. Frank and Pat and Bernie and I were all practicing Catholic. Not practicing very hard, but we were still practicing. We'd go to church together and, and all that stuff. And so Pat said, here's what we're going to do. Well, he rigged up this scam where Bernie had stolen his, and he was going to tell Bernie that he knew about it, but there was a problem. Blazi got mad at me because of thus and so, which of course was true, and he poked holes in me.
Oh my God. Oh no.
I can't now, honey. I'm over the rig.
No. Just shift it.
And
Shift it.
anyway, we talked about that, and Pat told Bernie, "You stole those? Blazi's been doing that." And I was going, I can't be a part of this. This is awful. This is terrible. And poor Bernie, who was about that far from the priesthood, and his girlfriend was that far from the nunnery, just went blank. And Pat just loved it and let him ride with it. And we had to, it was Holy Thursday or something, we had to go to Mass, and I couldn't stand it. I could not stand it. I felt like the lowest thing that had crawled out from under a rock. And so I'm sitting here, we're in church, and here's Frank Jr. with his nose, and Pat thinking about God knows what, and me and Bernie. And I got to feeling so bad and so guilty. I leaned over to Bernie and I said, Bernie, what we told you about those rubbers, it was all a lie. And Bernie was so freaked, he didn't even change expressions. He just kept looking at his head. And I had done all I could do, and we went on.
Well, you made your confession, didn't you?
Yeah,
Oh God. No, I probably lied about that. That was awful. That's one of the worst things I've ever done in my life.
But what I was talking about was we were heading there with Pat and the fraternity and how he was so awful and you all hated him so much and what you all did to him.
Well, we tried to pay him back for all of his awfulness, and we would rig up these things. And Frank, we would know what Frank didn't talk much, but we saw him stripping paper off one time, and he was doing strips of paper about that long. He sat there and we were talking. He was stripping this paper, and then he bent them. And it was a work of genius, actually. And he put these bent pieces of paper over the door sill so that they hung down like a spider web. So when Pat came in that night, drunk, he would walk in and these things would just wrap around his face and he would go completely nuts. Start screaming and everything. And that was a good impetus. So we started figuring stuff out. And we would do other things to him. When he came in, we set booby traps for him and stuff. And he got to the point of where he had his stupid, cheap, cheesy swagger stick. And he would come in at night, and we were all asleep. And he would come in at night and come in and pull everybody, and then he would sneak around the edges of the walls to come in.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And, I'm getting real paranoid. And one night he did that, and he came in to my room. I was his roommate, and Bernie and Frank were roommates. And he came in and, turned on the lights and woke me up and staggering around, smashing into walls and everything. And he took off his clothes and, threw his Levi's over the heater, which fortunately wasn't on. It was not on, and continued to strip off and get ready for bed, and walked over there, and you know what's coming. Started peeing
Oh
on
no.
his Levi's,
Oh no.
and he peed so much that they got sodden where it would splash.
Oh no.
It would splash on the wall, and I'm waking up and looking at this, and I can't believe it. And I kind of got up on one elbow. I said, "Higgins, what are you doing?" He said, "What?" So, I don't know about you women, but men have a little final squirt they do, and kind of just say, "What?" So, so then he turned around and he started, I mean, he's completely out of it. He's completely comatose and he's walking, but unfortunately he doesn't have his swagger stick. And he's in his underwear and he approaches the base of my bed.
Oh no.
And I just watched him. And he got to the base of my bed and he reached down and he got my sheet. He pulled my sheet off. So my sheet goes down. And I just sat there and I watched him, or my quilt, and then he got to my sheet and he pulled my sheet down. So I'm laying there, just with my legs out and everything. And then he came and he started working with his fingers up the side of the bed.
Creepy.
And I'm looking at him, he's getting closer and closer to my face. Working, and he got right about here to my face, and I said, "Higgins, what are you doing?" He said, just lucid as he could be, he said, "I'm looking for my Valvain or a box to pee in."
What?
I'll come to that in a minute. And I completely lost it. I really, at that point, wanted to hurt him, wanted to break bones, wanted to put out eyes and everything. And I reared back, and I didn't have any covers on me, so I tried to kick him in the face as hard as I could. And I missed, and he jumped back. Whoa! He jumped back. And then he went to bed. And the next morning, he woke up, and I woke up, and I said, "Pat, what is your Valvain?" V-A-L-V-A-N-E, I guess. What is your Valvain? And, Pat, if you didn't notice, he doesn't get defensive, he gets aggressive. And he looked at me like I was, probably stealing my food or something. Looked at me like I was the lowest scum of the earth. Of course, he's so hungover he can hardly walk. And he looked at me and he said, "How the fuck should I know?"
Didn't have a clue what you were talking about. Or my pee box.
I have witnessed that very thing.
Yeah.